So I'm here with Mick Classen, and he is a local artist, and he has turned his backyard into his own private gallery of his art, and we're going to talk to him about public art. So Mick, what is your definition of public art?
I guess public art is something that's, for me, is readily available and freely available to people. It does, for me, sculpture, outdoor sculpture is what I consider real public art because it's available to everyone, whereas museums and whatever, it's more restrictive and you can't bump into it, you go out of your way to see it. Public art is something that you happen upon.
So you mentioned sculptures, and we can also talk about public murals.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's great stuff. Like it's there.
Yeah.
My thing is sculpture, but yeah, murals, whatever in the whole field of art. We talked about bridges, that can be sculptures. Buildings can be sculptures. So.
Right. And art in publicly owned places where you don't have to pay to get in.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm thinking, I know we've had some art in the past at the airport.
Right. Yeah.
Of course, that's actually a fair drive for some people or a fair hike if they don't have a car.
Yeah.
But that can be where it's freely available to the public.
Yes, exactly. All that is certainly public art, but I guess my thrust is for the paths and the walkways where we spend our time, where we bump into things because they're there. That's more where I'm interested in terms of public art.
And are you familiar with a lot of the public art we have in Lloydminster?
Well, about as familiar as as Otis has brought us up to date with, yeah.
And do you have a favorite?
Do I have a favorite piece of public art? Ooh.
Like here in Lloyd. And then we may meet further afield if you've got some other ones that you're fond of.
What would be my favorite piece in town here? I do like the border markers. I don't know if they're effective, but I do like them. One of the things I don't like about them is that it's in such a high traffic and fast moving area, you don't get to appreciate them. So that's the only thing I don't like about those. But I think that the structures themselves, it's a pretty cool idea. Yeah. I wish they could be more effective. They almost would be better going east-west. Because then they would be more noticeable.
Oh,
but
God. If only that parallel had been the border.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So that's a big one.
Yeah,
for sure.
it's difficult because all you really driving past, all you see is the orange. You don't realize that the bases.
There's something happening with them. You're just seeing one part of the whole thing, and you kind of miss it.
Yeah.
And plus, it's busy. You're trying to not have an accident.
Yeah. And when it's not busy, it's dark.
Yeah.
And even then it's busy. I know I drove past them on my way here today, and traffic. It was...
I think from a distance they would just be fantastic, or aerial shots, You need to,
but then you only
need to
see that
kind of
part of it
approach
too.
Yeah.
Is people? I think a lot of people don't realize that there is stuff on the bases.
Yep, for sure.
And I personally have not walked around and looked at all this stuff.
It was up by the one by Arby's because it was crossing the street. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the affordability?
Well, yeah, I guess that's one of the things that I really struggle with in terms of, for me, in terms of sculpture, how inaccessible they are typically because of the budgets required for, if they're a bronze sculpture or whatever. And to be effective, they need to be a reasonable size. I think a good example is that question mark. It looks so big in the garage, right? You don't hardly see it, do you? So you don't realize how big. I guess that's from my background in the sign industry. Like, people say, well, that's a big sign. Well, no, really, when you get it up there, it's going to be a small sign. This is a big sign. This is what's appropriate. So what's appropriate outdoors for certain locations has to be quite large. Other locations it can be smaller because maybe it's a walk by in a path here. but for a lot of places, they need to be the what is the one?
Skydance?
Yes, like that's a good size for that
Yeah.
space. You know, and the nice thing about that is it can be seen. You know, there's not as many things distracting as they are from the border markers. Huh? So that's a good size, but that's a big structure. Huh? When you get up to it, you don't realize how it's a big structure.
Yeah,
You
and
know, it
sometimes,
is.
sometimes though, like I say, if it's art in a park, a hidden gem,
Yeah,
so you can find it
yeah. It's on
when
a
you're
pathway
walking
someplace.
past, so that
Yeah.
it's designed that you
Yeah.
actually have to be. You can only see it when you're in the park
Yeah.
and either on foot or whatever. But you're not in your
It's
you're not in a car.
Designed for a space like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But getting back to affordability, that's where I always struggle with how expensive these things are, and so my focus has been how can you create reasonably sized objects affordably so that it's not you're not doing it every 20 years, you know. And that's where the mediums that I use, I think, make it affordable. A lot of other artists, like people that are into sheet metal and stuff like that, that can be quite affordable too, because it's fairly. But when you get into bronze casting, oh my goodness, it just becomes horrendously expensive. But concrete is relatively inexpensive, and so it's more labor than anything. Materials really not much. Yeah.
Yeah, and you also, so concrete is your primary medium for your sculptures.
Mhm.
But looking around your yard, we do see some metal,
Yep.
which has been naturally exposed to the elements, so it
Yep.
has rusted,
Yep.
which also is, a factor if you were working in some sort of metal.
Yeah.
If you want it to.
Yeah. In terms of cost, that's a good way to go, because then it just don't have to finish it unless somebody spray paints it or whatever. Then you can, remove that. But that's easy to remove. So
And that brings up actually another question and issue with public art is vandalism.
mhm. Yeah.
That we could put all sorts of stuff, and we have, say, in Bud Miller Park, and it gets totally trashed by people. Even temporary stuff gets damaged. But even so, we have to factor in the fact that we may have to repair or clean.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's always that's a function. So you want to design things. I think that's part of the artist's deal too, is that you want to design something that's functional, that's aesthetic, but it's not something ridiculous to keep cleaning. It is relatively easy to deal with graffiti. Otherwise, if it becomes a real pain, it's just a negative for people that are involved in deciding on these things. If it's just going to be a nightmare to keep clean, let's not do it.
Yeah.
You know.
I actually find that public art doesn't get graffitied as much.
As people.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think they kind of respect the arts of the people that are putting graffiti on things. But that's my personal opinion, sorry.
Yeah. But I think the anti-graffiti coatings are fairly effective. And now I just discovered last week, because of the project I had in mind, an anti-climbing paint.
Oh!
Yeah.
What does that mean? Is it just really, really slick?
Yeah,
Or?
it's very difficult to...
Well, you also have to design a piece of art that has no handholds and footholds.
Well, yeah. That's
But should
interesting.
we let the thought of vandalism and graffiti dissuade us from our vision?
No, it shouldn't, but I think it should be... the artists need to be cognizant of that, You can create something weird and wonderful that will just be an absolute nightmare to maintain or very easy to destroy, So you have to kind of balance that thing and be practical with your designs, I think.
Well, and we expect our art maybe to last a while, but it may not be permanent too.
Yep.
because some public art I know could be a temporary installation. I'm thinking of Christo and his wrapping everything.
How he gets his money for that, I'd like to know. Holy mackerel, you know, these things that last a
I'm
week.
thinking corporate sponsorship.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking so too, but who would be so, yeah. The waste, when he did that valley thing with all the cloth fabric, did you see that one? Like, I don't know how many miles it was. Like, what do you do? I hope he had a good plan for what he was doing with this stuff when it was done.
Yeah. We have to also consider that its setting is not permanent.
Yep.
And then we'd have to move it. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Oh, lots of sculptures have been moved. Lots of them.
I keep looking at all the statues get toppled. Or they cut off the head and replace it with a different head as things change. Do you have any other questions?
No.
No. How are you feeling comfortable with this discussion?
Oh yeah, this is fine.
Yeah, this is what. So, I'm thinking probably want to wrap it up, and so we're going to thank you, Mick, for just this talk, and we're going to take a look at what he's got, the hidden gems in his yard.